so that everybody knows where they are. Yay! I love the cover.
I do too. I think she did a really beautiful job with the cover art.
Who did it?
Amy, I don't know how to say her name, Ruppel.
Okay.
Ruppel,
yeah,
maybe, out of Portland.
It's a very nice cover.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Rachel's going to correct me.
I know.
Fix it, Rachel.
Her name is Amy Ruppel, and she was in The Tall Trees of Portland.
Oh, okay.
And the book designer was Jenny Kimura.
Oh, who I know.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Looks like we've got a couple more people hopping on. So if you can see and hear me, it says Cassie. My name is Julie. If you haven't been to an event at the store before, I'm using Cassie's Zoom account. So we're just going to wait for a few more people to get logged in and let everybody get a chance to get their audio or video tuned in correctly. New guests, you are muted when you come in. So I just want to make sure that everybody, if you want to ask a question of Ruby when we get to that, or let me see here. I'm trying to think of how the easiest way to show you guys this is. Let me get into right here. So you should see it on the screen if you're using video, but there's a chat function. If you go into Zoom and hit more, and you can type in a question for our author so that when we get to that part, and let's see here. Yeah, so we've got 4 or 5 people joining us. We'll give them a few more minutes to get hopped on. Yeah, thank you again, Ruby, for taking the time to be with us on, I mean, it is Friday, but we're all stuck pretty much at home, so, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
What's it like in Bend right now?
It's really sunny, but it's really windy, and so it does get a little bit chilly, and then it warms back up, and then it kind of, Wednesday so far has been our nicest day, and it did get into the 70s, so it was really fun. I played outside with my nephew for a couple hours.
Yeah, are people managing to get out and spread out appropriately? And
I think so. We've got a lot of space. We've got a lot of parks. We've got a lot of trails people can still get out to. And I know some friends went RV camping, just basically did the like pull off on the side of the road, camping your RV stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I see Pat.
Pat McDonald's in the house. Right. All things received, Pat. Thank you.
For everyone who's joining us, we also want to say thank you. The publisher of this book is actually on the Zoom event right now as well. So that's kind of a fun new thing to have the publisher. There you go. Hi, Pat.
Yay, indie presses.
Right? Yep. We support small business.
Yep.
So, okay. Yeah, let's just give it a couple more minutes. And, oh, we do have somebody else coming in. This is looking great. Okay. So real quick, I do want to let everybody know that we are recording this so that we can put it up on our YouTube and some of our other social channels. So if you're not comfortable with your image being shown, make sure and keep your video off. But if you want to ask questions of Ruby when we're towards the end of this event, there is a chat function in Zoom. So I'm going to go to that and show you real quick. Let's see here. Nope, I'm not sharing my screen now. I want to share that. I'm learning this as we go as well. Let's see here. How do I make this full screen again? You guys don't need to see all of my screens.
Valerie Brooks.
Hey, 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 Ruby, Ruby. How goes it? Good to see you.
Good
There
to
we
see you.
So,
You're surviving.
Oh, yeah. I'm more than surviving. I'm thriving.
Fabulous.
How's that? Yeah. Yeah, you too, huh? Looking good, girl.
Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you.
So everyone who's on, just make sure when you see this control bar on your screen, if you hit more and hit chat, it will pull up a chat function that shows to me so that I can help you ask your question. So I think I'm gonna hit stop share and we're gonna go back to everyone should just be seeing their Zoom screen and not my computer. So let's see here. Valerie, we're gonna put you back on mute. If
Good.
that's okay? Yeah.
That's fine.
Just that way we don't get any feedback from anybody. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is actually our first official Zoom book event for Roundabout Books. So thank you, because now I can learn what to do in this time of social distancing and still supporting indie authors, indie presses, and indie bookstores. We are joined tonight by Ruby McConnell, who just published her new book called Ground Truth. I don't know that you can see it as well with my lighting in here. So Ruby is up in Portland, and I just kind of want to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about the book, what inspired you, and everything else.
Yeah, sure. So hi, welcome everybody. There's some familiar people in there. Thank you so much. I want to first of all say, like, you're taking these few minutes to hang out with me tonight is supporting a wonderful bookstore in Bend, Oregon that hosts many, many live events and is a hub for a whole community and a whole neighborhood. And I'm just so thankful that they are managing to find that community online. You're also supporting an indie press out of Portland. I actually live in Eugene. The indie press is in Portland. They are Overcut Books. You can always support their work online at Overcut Books. They are also great champions of bookstores, independent bookstores all over the United States. And then, of course, you're supporting me and my work and environmental writers everywhere. And I feel like we're going through a moment where environmental writing is being recognized as being relevant. And that's exciting and hopeful for me. So thanks everybody for being here. Ground Truth, I'll flip the cover. I'm not used to the opposite yet of Zoom, so I flipped things wrong. Ground Truth is a collection of environmental essays, and really quickly, the fundamental thing that I was doing with Ground Truth was actually this process in geology. I'm a geologist by trade, where I was kind of ground truthing, as we would say, my own life. In geology, the phrase ground truth is used for the process of going back and verifying what you've decided about something, or the assumptions that you've made, or the conclusions that you've drawn based on data that's been collected from some distance at the source. And to me, that reflects human experience as well, in memories and life story and history and cultural history. And so the process of writing this book was really sort of, I think, a coming into middle age process of evaluating myself up until that point. And I can actually, I'll read like just one little paragraph out of the first essay, which is actually about Mount St. Helens, that exemplifies that. So my understanding of the region that I was born to is much like my understanding of Mount St. Helens, based on observations and measurements made from a distance. But one thing is clear: the forces and situations that have shaped my life and those of everyone in the region are knitted to the land. to forces both in and out of our control. In the Pacific Northwest, the land is always the thing. No exertion of human will or industry will take away its precedence. The course of the population's lives are inexorably linked to the whims of an untamable land. A dome still simmers in the crater of Mount St. Helens. Trees still fall by the thousands, but now in the slow, noisy progression of industry doomed by greed and willful lack of insight. What follows are fragments, field notes from those portions of this land that I have attempted to ground truth for myself. And that was sort of how I went about the writing of the book. I really wanted to look at the Pacific Northwest as a landscape in its entirety and the ways in which that was connected to my own human history and all of our shared history. So, Cassie, I'm sorry, Julie, you got Cassie and I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh, it's suggestive. Can I share with them my rabbit shtick? I'm excited to talk. These are the people I'm going to share my rabbits with. Can I talk to you about my rabbits?
Yeah.
People want to hear about my rabbits. Valerie wants to hear about my rabbits. I can tell that Valerie wants to hear about my rabbits. Okay, so when I went to write the outline for the book, you would think that I would have taken my life and found important events and put them into place, but I didn't. What I did was I took the different physiographic regions of the Pacific Northwest and their characteristics and started there. And as I wrote about them, discovered and uncovered my own personal connection to them. So, high desert. Roundabout Books is in the high desert of Oregon. And I have a high desert story to tell you. And this is one of my favorite pieces in the book. And, you know, people think it's dark and I'm just going to go with it anyway. So I don't have time to read the whole essay. I'm going to have to catch you all up. So stick with me. Okay, we're going to do a brief rundown of my rabbits. And the essay is called 5 Cents a Bunny. So the first thing that you have to know about this essay is that 7 years ago, a good friend of mine in Eugene had a decline of mental wellness. And as part of this, he had an incident where he was driving emotionally distraught through the Coast Range mountains and hit something. And gets out of the car on a rainy day, and when he walks back behind the car, finds that he has hit a huge rabbit, what he called a massive white rabbit. And as he watches this rabbit in the road, another rabbit comes and cradles the first rabbit in its arms and howls and screams. And Hans, this friend, tells me this story during his decline and made art about rabbits and filled the house with rabbits, and eventually took his own life in this house filled with rabbits, and was so preoccupied with it that it brought me to the central question of the essay, which is whether or not there is an argument for the rabbit's possession of a soul. And if so, Hans's story being perhaps the best evidence for such a thing. And this is important because humans have this really long relationship to rabbits. And rabbits are considered these really special creatures. So in fact, of the 5 to 7 forms of rabbits that we find in Oregon, there's only one that could be described as a massive white rabbit. And it's the jackrabbit. And those rabbits, when frightened, will scream. This very protective, loud scream that we as humans, I think, can relate to in times of crisis. And it's not unwarranted because rabbits, of course, are prey animals. And no one is a rabbit more prey to, perhaps, than humans. And in fact, humans have been eating rabbits in what we call cuniculture for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And in the United States, rabbits used to provide more meat for Americans than any other kind of game. I know, people don't believe this, but this is true. We used to eat just an enormous amount of rabbit. In Eastern Oregon, though, when the settlers came out, there was a rabbit problem. People came and they planted gardens, and the rabbits loved the gardens. And Harney County in particular and Deschutes County, where Roundabout Books is, overrun with rabbits. Thousands of rabbits, bunnies everywhere, eating everything, bunnies like locusts. Okay, so what they did was they put a bunny bounty out, especially in Harney County. And there are oral history projects that document young boys going out, killing rabbits, stringing their ears onto wires, and then going down to the store and trading for bacon and flour at the price of 5 cents a pair of ears. It didn't work, even though in a very short amount of time, hundreds of thousands of rabbits were brought in this way in the state of Oregon. So that was one of the first approaches to killing, controlling the rabbit population in Oregon. The very first approach was the rabbit roundup. And so that's where we're going to start, is we're going to start at the rabbit roundups. And for just a moment, wait, hold on. I'm going to try and share my screen. This is where it goes sideways, and I apologize. Okay, can I share it? I might not be able to. I might not. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right.
Let me
Give you a couple of rabbit pictures here. These are rabbits. Okay.
Oh God.
These are, I'm sorry, I know, I'm like, everyone's like, and you wonder why people don't want to talk about your rabbits, but I want to give you a visual to go with this, because I think that the visual for this is an important thing. So let me read. The first approach was the rabbit roundup. Rabbit roundups, or drives, as they were often called, were prevalent throughout the American West well into the 20th century. They consisted of rousing rabbits with hounds, or by beating the brush with sticks and then driving the rabbits into low enclosures or nets before allowing paying customers to club them over the head. At times, more than 12,000 rabbits would be rousted, chased, corralled, and beaten to death at days-long events that seemed more like socials than work parties. During the day, women served coffee, tea, and sandwiches, and they were typically followed in the evening by a Hassenpfeffer feed. Pictures from these events show cheerful men and women in suits and lace-edged, high-collared dresses posing proudly next to piles of rabbits that reach over their heads. The organizers of one such event in Southern Oregon acknowledged the possibility that, quote, killing harmless bunnies might seem inhumane, but asserted that it is astonishing how quick pity subsides when one witnesses the destruction the bunny hands down to a young orchard or vineyard. That particular event was viewed as a success, as the death count of jackrabbits was 1,200. From 1875 to 1896, there were 305 official rabbit drives throughout the West, which together killed an estimated 635,546 rabbits. Take a minute. Let me just say that again. From 1875 to 1896, there were 305 official rabbit drives throughout the West, which together killed an estimated 635,546 rabbits. And in case you think that this is not relevant, just today, the state of Colorado banned this kind of event. Wait, no, they did it yesterday and they announced it today. Just so you know, that was in the news. The organizers from one such event in Southern Oregon acknowledged the possibility, we read that. In spite of these astonishing numbers, roundups had little to no impact on the overall rabbit population. As early as 1915, the Oregon Sportsman called them, quote, a good example of overthrowing the balance of nature. But the roundups continued because they seemed to serve a more important purpose: allowing urban Oregonians to blow off steam. One enthusiast participant underscored the point, noting, everybody felt good about it except the jack. Ultimately, the Oregon State Extension Service took pity on the rabbits and convinced farmers to switch to a pest control solution: poisoned alfalfa. In the 21st century, rabbit roundups in cuniculture have fallen out of favor as the agri-industrial complex has removed the population from its food sources and narrowed the choices and palates of the American public. In 2003, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Services canceled its own event, a family rabbit hunt day that was part of their ongoing Becoming an Outdoor Woman program, which teaches outdoor skills and safety. Animal rights advocates had objected, saying that it encouraged cruelty to animals and young people to play with guns. 26 people had registered to attend. Rabbit populations, however, are not booming as a result of this shift in compassion and policy. Habitat destruction, wildfires, overhunting, and decades of poisoned alfalfa have severely constricted population growth. As a result, some species, most notably the tiny pygmy rabbit, are now listed as endangered. All this is happening just as economists, climate change experts, and food scientists are beginning to argue that rabbits, of all creatures, could save the world. Rabbit meat is leaner than most other meats, making it a healthier choice in this era of first world obesity and declines in life expectancy. Furthermore, rabbit meat is allowed by Muslim law, kosher, and considered acceptable for consumption by Hindus, making it one of the most widely accepted meats in the world. Moreover, rabbits do not feed on grain, but on their associated leafy greens and surrounding grasses. Replacing beef and other forms of meat with rabbit, which produce at significantly higher rates than other animals bred for meat, would greatly decrease the impact of producing meat proteins on the world food supply, enabling significant amounts of grains to be transported directly to the mouths of people. Since rabbits are found throughout the world, switching to a rabbit-based diet would encourage localized production, in turn increasing the stability of the global food chain, encourage local economies and related industries, and greatly decrease the carbon footprint of agriculture at large. Why then do we not embrace a contemporary rabbit-based diet? Surely in a modern world, we must have the ability to see beyond cuteness and sentiment to issues of sustainability and nutritional justice. And yet we hesitate, stymied by a reticence surely related to our perception of some form of humanity in these hunted and frightened animals. Part of this is undoubtedly the oversized role the rabbit plays in our imaginations. Rabbits and their peculiar behavior have permeated secular culture and language for centuries. Take, for example, mad as a March hare, a popular British saying referring to the boxing behavior observed in hares in the early weeks of the mating season as over-aggressive males are beaten off by picky females. That analogy served as the basis for the March hare in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, perhaps the most pervasive and enduring example of the rabbit as personified character. Fictional hares, Bugs, Peter, and even Pooh Bear's rabbit are often portrayed as comical victims, set upon by villains, predators, and troublesome neighbors. Closer analysis, though, reveals a more complex pattern of portrayal in which rabbits serve as proxy for our own existential crises, the best of which may be the velveteen rabbit's quest to become real. It is a practice that extends far beyond children's literature. In folklore traditions worldwide, rabbits are symbols of springtime, good luck, and fertility. They are renowned and celebrated for their skittishness and fear, and envied for their ability to disappear into the ground, the metaphorical netherworld. In stories from the early peoples of the central United States and Canada, rabbits are fear callers, entities that project their own fear, attracting the very predators they hope to avoid. Mythology often casts rabbits as symbol of sacrifice, and Catholicism and Buddhism, most notably, have adopted the rabbit into their stories of new life and redemption. There are others. Carroll's White Rabbit and his descent into the rabbit hole is a reflection of ancient Celtic beliefs. Before Christianization, the Irish practiced a form of earth-based polytheism that emphasized animism, the attribution of a soul to plants, animals, and natural phenomena. The Celtic hare played a central role in their belief of the presence of the divine in the material world. They believed that rabbits burrowed underground in order to better commune with the spirit world, that they could carry messages from the living to the dead and from humankind to the fairies. Which brings me back to Hans. He wept the night he told me the story about the rabbits in the road, and he wept on the several occasions he returned to it. The rabbits seemed to call him to the underworld. For those of us around him, the rabbits he depicted in his art came to symbolize the most damaged and calloused parts of humanity. Like the Portlanders with their clubs, or a young boy with a flour sack's worth of rabbit ears on a wire, the rabbits are a sign of our collective descent. And we are in descent. We face an urgent dilemma, a tangible existential crisis to which rabbits may be the answer if only we would act. Our continued refusal to do so can only prove one thing. We are all mad here. So
That was awesome.
Thank you. I feel like I wrote that long before we had a virus population that we couldn't control and that we had no solution to. And I wrote that long before the instability of our meat processing facilities was front page news. But I think that the solution may very well remain the same, and we do need to start talking about some radical differences, whether or not it's with or without bunnies. Also, I would like to say, Oregonians, rabbit roundups. Can you believe it?
Knowing some of the odd Oregon history that I know, I do actually believe it. There are some things that stayed on Oregon law books for far longer than other states. We're not as progressive as people think. So that's interesting. Well, I just wanted to go back. I think we'll go ahead and open it up for questions, but I have to tell you that I did really love that first story too about Mount St. Helens. And it's so amazing that it's coming up on, 40 years since it happened. You were not old enough to remember it, right? No. Okay, but do you still feel like there's something about it that kind of defines like a point in time for your family where it's something that is still talked about, like Mount St. Helens? So Ruby knows this. I just want to put it out there for everybody else. It happened the day after my grandpa's birthday, and my mom kept falling asleep because she didn't know she was pregnant with me yet. So we always talk about Mount St. Helens in that, so my grandpa's been gone for a while, but then I was born after it, kind of, or, that whole, they had lived in Washington, they had lived in Rainier, Oregon, we were all down here in Bend, but my grandpa worked in logging, so it was very, defining. Yeah.
I think it was that way. I think that Mount St. Helens was a touchstone experience for people in the Pacific Northwest. I think that as a regional event, was like the Kennedy assassination, where you get a lot of that. People have stories. They remember where they were at that place and time. And it was an inflection point, spring of 1980 was a transition culturally, our generation was just being born. Our parents were, the boomers were in big transition in terms of coming, sort of having come of age and having like their kids, and they did a lot of shifting there. And I think that Mount St. Helens, because there was a big buildup to it, it grew this big bulge. I mean, it was growing this bulge so fast, and we were kind of like little ants watching it. Everybody sort of skittered to the volcano and was like, look at the big bulge. And then when the entire mountain failed, it was like, oh, that's what was going to happen. It seemed so obvious, in retrospect, but it kind of got everyone's attention, and the slow buildup kind of captured everyone's imagination in a way that I don't think had happened around science since the space race. for Americans. And so I think that kind of shared experience, yeah, it's like it becomes an inflection point. And you do, like, we're going to do that, you know, before the pandemic and after the pandemic. We're doing the same thing. You know, these natural events become the markers for our life. Yeah.
So without, you know, scaring anyone who lives in this region, and obviously I live closer, do you keep track of the bulge on the side of, what is it, the middle sister?
Yeah, no, I don't pay. No, I don't. I mean, I do because I get all the volcano emails, and I'm interested, but I'm not worried about it. I don't worry about volcanoes.
Yeah.
I won't scare anybody. Don't be scared of volcanoes. Don't be scared of volcanoes. Don't be scared of earthquakes. Be adequately afraid of tsunamis. Don't be scared of pandemics ever either. You're okay. We're all doing fine.
Yeah, because we joke about it here we're so close to Newberry caldera,
Right.
which of course happened, you know, however many millennia ago. But the joke is also that Pilot Butte in the center of town is technically still, she's dormant, but she's not inactive.
Right. And I grew up on Mount Tabor in Portland, which is
Yes.
which is dormant as well, you know, and is still active. And maybe that's why, but you know, never ask geologists if we don't worry about it. You know, I mean, I have had that conversation with geologists standing in the crater of Mount St. Helens when it was like erupting, and they're like, should we worry about this? And we're like, nah.
So I have a thought that we could have a very fun outdoor excursion with you where we hike into the bowl at Broken Top and you can tell us nerdy facts.
You know, there's a lot of people in my life that get to do that with me and don't call it a fun excursion because they're not as into the, some people think that rocks are, and I know this is hard to believe, boring. People think this.
I took a geology class in college and we had to do 2 different excursions out of 4, and I did Broken Top and the backside of, where did they film that scary movie? Why am I forgetting what I'm talking about? Up by Government
Rock.
No, up by Government Camp.
The Shining.
Yes. Where did they film The Shining?
Timberline.
Timberline. Sorry. Thank you. We hiked the backside of, you know, Timberline and did
Mount Hood. Yeah.
Yes. And that, I had some trouble breathing on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's tall. Thank you for the person who remembered the movie.
Yeah.
Mount
Hood.
Right. So does anyone have any specific questions for Ruby? And you know, obviously it's okay if you don't. We're just kind of chill with this one.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a specific question. You can ask a general question too.
Yes.
Comments.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a comment. Bring it. Give me a comment. Valerie Brooks. You should know.
Hey, I've got a comment. Yeah.
Is in the house.
I'm in the house. One of the things, okay, that you talk about with the rabbit, you know, it will never work. Because even during World War II, when my mom was in London during the Blitz, they gave a pair of rabbits to all the families because they reproduce fast and you can, they had no meat. They're basically they have to go in and buy, you know, whatever leftover fish they had. So they gave a pair of rabbits to all the families. But of course, what happens is they had baby rabbits, and my grandparents said it was a disaster because their 4 kids did not want to kill those rabbits. They became friends with the rabbits, even though they were told not to go out there and talk to the rabbits. And my grandmother secretly butchered the rabbits and made a stew, and the kids either wouldn't eat it or threw up.
Oh no.
So, I mean, you're talking, even in a war situation when they don't have meat and they're not getting that kind of protein.
Oh, I know. It's an uphill battle. And the American psyche too. Remember Michael Moore's first book about, his first movie about Flint, Michigan, there was the scene with the woman selling the rabbits, and that became iconic of, of a lot of things in that movie was those rabbits.
But I remember all the times that
it's just impossible to try and convince people.
But as kids, we all owned a rabbit foot.
Right. Right, you'll own it. You'll carry a rabbit foot with you everywhere you go, but you won't eat a Haas and Pfeffer stew. This is the question.
Well, my dad actually did hunt rabbits, and we did eat rabbit stew.
See,
but
I'm curious how many people here have eaten rabbit. Carmel, have you eaten rabbit? I bet Carmel has eaten rabbit.
Here, I'm gonna unmute.
You're gonna have to chat.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear?
Yeah,
I can. Have you eaten rabbit?
No way. We had 6 pet rabbits and I adore them. I'm a great rabbit ever.
I thought maybe as a child, but you own, see, so there's Valerie's. They were pet rabbits.
Yeah, 6 pet rabbits.
Rachel Bell has eaten rabbit. And see, right. So we're divided between the people who had pet rabbits.
Which we did.
And have eaten rabbits.
Right. No, you didn't. I mean, we even butchered cows. We were there and had to learn to do that. I mean, part of it is that it's agricultural, rural areas really versus more of the city areas, that made the difference. I think that's my.
Ruby, it feels like there's maybe that direct line to we're too urbanized. So I have friends that are originally from Georgia, and they tell me funny stories about eating squirrel, eating wild boar that is out in the woods, that as long as you can catch it, it's yours to eat.
Right.
So, and for me, and my grandma was a lover of squirrels. Like, we fed them all, and she had squirrel figurines, so she would never have thought of that. But I'm sure my grandma and my grandpa both had rabbit because they grew up in the dirt poor of North Dakota. So, yeah, I feel like it shows that because we had cows and pigs and stuff when I was a kid on one of my aunt's properties, and so we did butchery, but we sent it off. Like, we ate what we
butcher,
but we sent it to someone, and I never would have thought to eat little bunny foo-foo.
And I think that's, I think we're being faced with this same issue in the current moment as we sort of navigate the political issues around, wet markets and cultural differences of what's considered food and what's, how we present food and how we sell food and how we prepare food and how we transport food and the weaknesses within our own food system and how that ties into weaknesses in our healthcare systems.
Yes.
I think that we're talking about look at how fraught just rabbits are, and
you
then
think about dogs,
untangle what we have internationally as everybody in Eugene we have a company that makes flour out of crickets, and it's brilliant. And there's a really great, argument for why it's sustainable and wonderful. They have an uphill battle finding their people for all of these same sort of interesting.
Well, most people won't eat bugs, and it's really common in a lot of cultures, so it's like, But dogs,
well, there's
look at
some degree
dogs.
of bugs in your flour anyway.
That's right. We used to talk about the advantage of getting the protein.
Right.
But what about dogs? Dogs are eaten, horses are eaten in other cultures.
My dog says, no, don't eat me.
There's a dog listening to the event.
Oh, no, don't listen. My dog's sitting right here. So, oh, what a cutie.
He doesn't want to be eaten.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't look good enough to eat. I'm sorry. Little stringy.
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 Rachel is saying that pigeon is a primary protein for many Caribbean islanders, which is interesting.
My cousin, who's a chef in the Bay Area, went to Iceland a couple years ago and ate horse and puffin.
See, that's
Yep.
what I'm saying.
Which,
Right, there you go.
again, for me, we had horses, never would have thought about it, but also they are a utility animal. I can almost see that more than a little bunny. I guess maybe it's about the size. Well, but it's about the size too. More meat, I don't know.
Really traumatized her with the bunnies. And this was the thing, of all of the essays in this book, many of these were previously published. I had a lot of editors that really liked these rabbits and then were like, but no. And,
Really?
Generally they were like, oh, it's a little dark. And I was like, well, yeah. The hunger and the failure of food systems and hunting and eating other creatures is dark, and we have to talk about it anyway. And I was vegetarian and vegan for a very, very, very long time. So for me, this is all sort of an interesting intellectual exercise because I've spent a lot of time. I try to think really carefully about sustainability in eating and what that means, and that balance of health and sustainability, which and then also access and privilege. It's a fraught issue.
Big.
And I think that it's an important one for us to look at right now.
Yeah.
So what was the I'm gonna raise my hand. What was the primary seed of this book? Like, what made you? Was it a bunch of different essays that you put together and found a common thread, or what?
I had started writing. I wrote the first essay was about salmon, and I wrote it for the Northwest Perspectives essay contest that Oregon Quarterly Magazine used to run.
Yeah.
And I came in third place, and it was like the first essay I had ever written. So I wrote three essays for 3 years in a row. The first one was about salmon and my father, and then the next one I sort of paired rain and my mother. I was sort of like ran through my primary family members. And then when I ran out of primary family members, I sort of realized I was building on a collection. And once I got it into a collection, once I had 8 or 9 of them, I started thinking about a book. And then I had to work, and it's pretty challenging to find a through story and something to hang a bunch of essays on, and had to do some work on that. I read probably 150 essay collections just with an eye to how they had constructed that through story.
Interesting.
And it was very helpful. And then really kind of still didn't have that nailed down and needed a developmental editor that was good at what he did to help me, which I found at Overcup. Pat McConnell, shout out, Pat McConnell.
Yes, having worked for them previously, I agree.
Good developmental editors are worth their weight in gold.
Oh yeah, they are. Definitely.
The long pause on the phone conversation when Pat McDonald asked me, well, how did you see the essays being arranged? And I said, I arranged them by physiographic province. And it was just silence on the other side. As he figured out what he was going to do with the author who wanted to write it by physiographic province. And then talked me back from it.
After you explained what the hell it was.
Like, that's an interesting way of conceptualizing a book.
Sure, of course it is.
Yeah.
All the fun of it all.
Anything else? Wait, yeah,
Cassie, that's not Cassie?
That's not Cassie.
Cassie is our store owner, so this is her Zoom account. My name is Julie. I'm the events manager.
Julie. Oh, okay, Julie. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so
anything else?
Carmel has dropped out. And
yes.
I would just like to thank people for coming. I think it's really special that we're managing to do this. I also think it's really neat that I don't have to drive all the way across the state.
Right.
I mean,
That's my favorite part.
Footprint on my book tour is like 0, you guys.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be a selling point for environmental writing.
It's true.
I think we might look into a few more of these, especially for authors who are further away than what is feasible to travel. I mean, we pitch to a lot of East Coast authors, so I'm happy to
Good
host
idea.
some other people via Zoom. I think this is really fun.
Mm-hmm. You should have
and there are a lot of
farming and a writer.
But there are a lot of authors though that would love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, they're having to do it.
Yeah, a lot of authors don't want to travel. The other thing I was going to say
Yeah.
about the carbon footprint on Ruby's book is it is the Forest Steward Council. So basically, when you buy this book, the paper used to make this book has been offset with more trees that have been planted to offset the paper use.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's one of the things I have
Excellent.
to say. Indie presses, man, they care so much about like the physical book. You know, authors were like so self-centered, and like the whole universe revolves around us, and the book is just a byproduct of our greatness and intellect and genius. And you know,
Speak for yourself.
no, but indie presses, especially indie presses, like they care about the actual physical book, which is like all that really matters that goes out to people, because like it's not actually about authors at all. And to have people take the time to actually like package it and make it be a thing that goes and has its own life that people carry with them, you know. And I think about like the books that I've loved in my life, the way that I've held them like teddy bears, you know. I think it's important. So
Yes. Well done.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to Rachel and Pat, the publishers at Overcut Press, for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and once again to Ruby for joining us. Just remember, Roundabout Books, we might not be open right now to walk in, but we are always open for orders over the phone. The number is 541-306-6564. Or our website is roundaboutbookshop.com. And we have like 3 or 4 other Zoom events this month. So if you want to just hear from authors maybe you've never heard from before, just check out our events calendar and you'll get to see me. Maybe next time I'll do my hair. And again, we're going to put this up on the Roundabout Bookshop YouTube and share it on social media. So feel free to share that link to other people. This is actually kind of fun because then people can keep watching the event. So I want to thank everybody for being here. So
thank you, Julie.
Yeah, I think
thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ruby.
Safe out there. It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye. Take care.
Bye.